It's crazy. Have you seen that new movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No, but I keep hearing amazing things about it.
Yeah, we just saw it this past
Did you go to the movie theater?
weekend. Yeah.
Look at you, like a regular person.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
How was it? Tell me what it's a multiverse kind of movie.
It's
right?
like that. She ends up figuring out how to switch into her different lives and like take different times, different lives that she's lived throughout all of time.
Wait, what the
and
fuck?
Fast forward and rewind and use these things to her advantage and try to accomplish things. It's crazy.
Oh, I love time travel.
Yeah, it's wild.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, that was the theory that Terrence McKenna had to the thing that's going to change the universe is that one day someone's going to invent a time machine. And that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it. That's not what it works like. What he was saying, you can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time. So all time ceases to be linear. So there's no like tomorrow will be Wednesday and the next day will be Thursday. No. It's everything happens everywhere all at once. So people can travel back and forth through time. You can never own anything because someone could just travel through time and take it away from you when you weren't looking. Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people. You know, if you don't like what you said, you could rewind and start all over again. If you're in an argument with your wife, you can go to the library and get information and come back and go, actually, you know, Herodotus once said, and then bam, your wife thinks you're the smartest guy in the world. Like this, but there would be no normal life anymore. It would the world itself would be completely unrecognizable because time would mean nothing. You'd be able to travel back and forth through time.
All right, so then where would you go right now? Just if I could do, we can time travel right now, go back in
the past.
In the past.
Well,
what's one thing you'd like to see again?
See, that would be a different kind of time travel. That's an unrealistic theatrical version of time travel because like you said, once time travel is invented, that's the time you can start traveling. So you can't
go before that.
Right.
Okay.
So like here we are, it's May of 2022. If time travel is invented in June, we're not going back to April. You can't go back to April.
Okay.
But you can go from June to a million years in the future and see what people look like. You'll be able to do that. But they'll be able to come back too, and everything's going to be happening everywhere all at once. There's not going to be any sort of structure to life. There's not going to be anything in terms of money, possessions. As long as you could freely time travel, there will be no time. Everything's going to be moving around, and also instantaneously you'll become immortal. Because whatever we have right now in terms of technology, what we're going to have in a million years is going to be godlike. And you're going to be able to travel to that if in fact that actually does even take place. Because the question becomes like, what is the future if time travel does exist? So if time travel exists in June of 2022, is there even a future? Like, does it even take place? Because how can anybody invent things when they can just travel to a point where someone invented it already? But how are they going to invent it already if you can just travel to the future? And do they invent things still? Or do people, if they do invent things, what's to stop people from going back before them and taking the idea and introducing it before that? Thus, there'll be no intellectual property because there'll be no way to say you came up with it first. It won't exist.
Carlos Mencia will be the greatest comedian in the world. Just smashing.
Wow.
Think about that.
Is there someone working on time machines right now? There's got to be, right?
Well, there's a guy named Ronald Millett. I think he's out of the University of Connecticut, if you Google this. And he's got the craziest Spider-Man character origin story. His father died. And he became obsessed with time travel because he wanted to go back in time and save his father. So he became a professor studying time travel. And he came up with a workable model of a time machine. But it requires immense, immense power. That's him. Ron Millett built a device that illustrates the principles he believes could be used to build a time machine. But he was one of the people that came up with one of the first people to come up with the realization or the revelation that once that time machine was invented,
his dad died in
from
Vietnam.
then, yeah. But it is really like a comic book superhero sort of origin story, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a great origin story.
Yeah. So this guy has become obsessed and has been working on it for decades. And they think they have a working model of, like at least a theoretical model of a time machine, but it just requires like the power of the sun. It requires immense power. And I think there's a guy from, the early 19th century, Kurt Gödel. He wasn't from the early 19th century, early 20th century. And he had a working model of a time machine too, but it involved something as large as like the solar system. Like you needed a machine the size of a solar system or something crazy. Yeah. Kurt Gödel in 1949 found a solution to the field equations of general relativity which described a space-time with some unusual properties. This Gödel universe permitted closed time-like curves, hence a kind of time travel, and it did not admit decomposition into the successive moments of time. Yeah, so he had...
I didn't understand any of that sentence. I mean, like I'm like so stupid that if I start to realize what that means, it gives me a panic attack. Like as you talk about, there's no anything ever anywhere, or when you just mentioned the universe, and I realize there is something really up there. Like
Like it's not just up there.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's all around you.
That I don't
for
like
infinity.
That fucking gives me a panic attack immediately.
Yeah, it'll give you a panic attack if you really do stop and give it time and think about it. It's an amazing thing.
Do you think that they'll be able to take, like, I don't know if we have to go to computer modeling, but take the data of like this video, for instance, where these kids are in 1901.
Yeah,
and put that into like virtual reality where you could then insert yourself to be in there. You can't affect anything, but you could at least experience and hear what it's like.
Yeah, but you probably get an interpretation of it. Like, say if they wanted to do that today and they had this unbelievable ability to create people and images and places, and they decided to show you the construction of the pyramids, they would just be guessing.
Speaking of that, they've just released all those documents, JFK documents. Anything come out of that?
Did something come out of it? Oh, one thing that come out was they were saying that Lee Harvey Oswald was a Russian asset and that he had been honeypotted by his wife. And he lived in Russia in the 1950s. And they think that in this, I think what Russia's trying to say in this is that they were responsible for making Lee Harvey Oswald try to kill the president. There was so much shit going on with that story. For anybody that thinks in 2022 that you know what happened in 1963, you're crazy. What does it say? What does Tucker Carlson say? What does he say?
They spoke with someone who's...
Well, let's play it so we can hear his voice.
7 minutes long. It's long.
Oh.
I don't think we can play
Just
it.
let me hear a little bit of it.
He's just setting it up.
Murders the president of the United States, and then less than 48 hours later, that lone gunman is himself murdered by another lone gunman. What are the odds of that? It's one thing if you get struck by lightning, rare but possible. But if every member of your family also gets struck by lightning all on different days, you might begin to suspect these are not entirely natural events. But oh, replied the US government, they are. This bizarre chain of killings was all entirely natural. So less than a year after the JFK assassination, the Johnson White House released something called the Warren Commission Report. And the report concluded that while their motives remained unclear, both Lee Oswald and Jack Ruby had acted alone. No one helped them. There was no conspiracy of any kind. Case closed. Time to move on. And many Americans did move on. At the time, they had no idea how shoddy and corrupt the Warren Commission was. It would be nearly 50 years before the CIA admitted under duress that, in fact, it had withheld information from investigators about its relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. But even then, at the time, before that was known, the government's explanation didn't seem entirely plausible, and some people started asking obvious questions about it. It was at that point, as Americans started to doubt the official story, that the term conspiracy theory entered our lexicon. As Professor Lance DeHaven Smith points out in his book on the subject, the term conspiracy theory did not exist as a phrase in everyday American conversation before 1964. In 1964, the year the Warren Commission issued its report, the New York Times published 5 stories in which conspiracy theory appeared. Now, today, of course, the term conspiracy theory appears in pretty much every New York Times story about American politics. It's wielded, now as then, as a weapon against anyone who asks questions the government doesn't feel like answering. But despite 60 years of name-calling, those questions have not disappeared. In fact, they have multiplied with time. And here's one of them. In April of 1964, a psychiatrist called Louis Joylan West visited Jack Ruby in his isolation cell in a Dallas jail. According to West's written assessment, he found that Jack Ruby was, quote, technically insane and in need of immediate psychiatric hospitalization. Those are conclusions that, puzzlingly, no one who had spoken to Jack Ruby previously had reached. Ruby had seemed perfectly sane to the people who knew him. Louis Joylan West pronounced him crazy. But what West did not say was that he was working for the CIA at the time. Louis Joylan West was a contract psychiatrist for the spy agency. He was also an expert on mind control and a prominent player in the now infamous MK Ultra program, in which the CIA gave powerful psychiatric drugs to Americans without their knowledge. So of all the psychiatrists in the world, what in the world was this guy doing in Jack Ruby's prison cell? The media did not seem interested in finding out. In fact, the New York Times, in an extensive 1999 obituary of West, never mentioned the fact that he had worked for the CIA, much less his time in Jack Ruby's cell, which seems relevant. So you can see why non-crazy people would wonder about what really happened, and of course many have wondered. In 1976, long forgotten, the House of Representatives impaneled a special committee to reinvestigate the JFK assassination. Their bipartisan conclusion? Jack Kennedy was almost certainly murdered as the result of a conspiracy. But the question is, a conspiracy by whom? Well, the obvious suspect would be the CIA. Why else would the agency withhold critical evidence from investigators? Is there a benign explanation for that, for maintaining this level of secrecy for this many years? Not that we're aware of. And it is illegal. In 1992, Congress passed the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act. And that act mandated full disclosure of all documents by 2017, 54 years after JFK was killed. The last administration promised to comply fully with that law, but under intense pressure from CIA Director Mike Pompeo, withheld in the end thousands of pages of CIA documents. Today, this afternoon, the Biden administration did exactly the same thing. That would be thousands of pages of documents after nearly 60 years, after the death of every single person involved. But we still can't see them. Clearly, it's not to protect any person. They're all dead. It's to protect an institution. But why? Well, today we decided to find out. We spoke to someone who had access to these still hidden CIA documents, a person who was deeply familiar with what they contain. We asked this person directly, did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? And here's the reply we received verbatim. Quote, the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake. Jesus. It's hard to imagine a more jarring response than that. Again, this is not a, quote, conspiracy theorist that we spoke to. Not even close. This is someone with direct knowledge of the information that once again is being withheld from the American public. And the answer we received was unequivocal. Yes, the CIA was involved in the assassination of the president.
Wow.
Now, some people will not be
Bro.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
97% of the documents they said have now been released. I think as of this time, like whatever, yesterday or something, and people are starting to look through those. They don't expect to find anything in those because there's still
they've kept
thousands of documents.
Well, I would definitely not let people read the ones that would be looking bad. I mean, that's the only explanation. Why can't we read them? They must be bad. They can't be good. Well, they say a lot of great things about the CIA, and we're pretty humble. I mean, we don't want that.
That's going to cause chaos. That's why. The whole place, the country's going to fucking riot.
How will they ever find out? If they're able to keep shit from us, how will they ever find out? Even though there's been laws passed and, rulings that they're supposed to release it in 2017. Like, what? But why not? Like, what are you doing?